Hello ladies and gentlemen, I am BorderWise, and welcome to another Let's Build with post-commentary by me, your host, BorderWise. And today we're doing a Let's Build specifically for Ashes of the Empire, aka the one and only land campaign, included with From the Depths, because I've gotten a number of requests that may or may not be from the same person commenting multiple times. I don't actually remember, sorry. I need to get better at remembering people's names in the comments, but I'm bad with names to begin with. Anyway, so they basically were suggesting I should make a tank destroyer, and since the Hobson, the light armored vehicle, or LAV, yes, I have been reading the other comments telling me that technically they're LAVs rather than AFVs. Anyway, so I assume what they meant was like a World War II style tank destroyer. So basically a big gun on tracks with no turret, and that's basically it. So we're talking like, geez, my World War II vehicle knowledge isn't super great. Things like the Jagdpanther, the Jagdtiger, the Hetzer, the Stug, that kind of thing. And so yeah, that's what I built during this episode, and it turned out actually a bit better than I thought it would. So what I was going for, and by the way, the thing is well over the Ashes volume limit. Pardon the ambient sound as I take me hoodie off because it got hot in here again. What was I saying? Alright, so it's well over the volume limit, which I don't particularly mind because those of you who are following my Ashes of the Empire playthrough, I don't play with the volume limit anyway, because I think it is dumb and I'm not the only one who thinks that. But if you play with the volume limit, don't let me ruin your fun. I might do, once I've finished this playthrough, I might do another playthrough of it in the future with the volume limit. Like, you know, once I've got the hang of like building decent vehicles that are within it. So yeah, so the idea is just a big armored front-sider, a land-based front-sider, with a massive, massive gun. And speaking of the massive, massive gun, you're looking at it right now. That is a 500mm APS cannon that fires 8-meter long shells. And those are kinetic hollow point, because I was experimenting back and forth. Like, you'll notice I did not build the main weapon of this thing on camera, because that took a while. I've never built a vehicle like this before in From the Depths, and so like it always helps to get the really like fiddly and important bit done ahead of time, like off screen, so you don't have to watch me just testing the, you know, bad guns over and over. This one is okay. It's not fantastic. I'm not sure, like, I don't know. So the first thing I tried actually with the main gun of this thing was a railgun. That didn't. I don't know. It wasn't what I was looking for. It didn't have that satisfying punch because I wanted a giant gun, because that's fun. And I also want a lot of sloped armor. So you'll notice that there's a lot of just stacked slopes on this. I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, that this is a great way to heat-proof, as in shaped charge-proof. Your vehicle is just stack heavy armor slopes like this. It's also not terrible hesh defense or squash head defense. Not ideal because the spalling, the fragmentation from the hesh round will shred the slopes behind it. But there's so many slope layers on the front of this thing that it's not like it's gonna take more than a few shots in order to get through it. Anyway, this is the part where I'm trying to remember how to spell assault. I put the ass right in assault, apparently. You cannot spell assault without ass. That is, that's the rules. I didn't make them up. Whoever came up with the English language came up with that. So you can blame him. Or her. It was probably a him, let's face it. And so, yeah, the whole plan is just this thing points at the enemy, moves around, and you'll notice that with the shape of this thing, the shape I end up with is far closer to the width and length ratio of what an armored vehicle should be. It has been noted by any number of people in the comments section of my Ashes playthrough that my tanks, specifically the Ironback and the Elegant, so the for the memes land canoe, is that they're too narrow. I know they are too narrow. I don't know, I just kind of by default seem to build craft like that. I'm not sure why. I have canoes in my blood, apparently. Just, I don't know. That's just kind of how it happens. And for those of you wondering, yeah, that is a terrible way to build tanks. If you make them too narrow, they can't turn properly, and that's exactly the problem that the Ironbacks have. They do not turn well, and so in order to compensate for that, they have the side friction setting on their wheels, aka tracks, is set to, like, absolute minimum, because, yeah, because otherwise, like they cannot turn, and what that means instead is that they Tokyo drift all over the place. And, getting back to what's on screen right now, you'll notice that there's a lot of heavy armor poles, 3-meter heavy armor poles, stacked vertically, and 4-meter long horizontal heavy armor poles stacked horizontally. I didn't think that sentence through before I opened my big fat gob to say it. So yeah, that's also a form of volume. I believe that's quite volume efficient heat and hash proofing. This whole thing is not volume efficient, so you've got to actually wonder why I bothered. But it does mean that even the roof of this thing, or the upper hull, I guess you could call it for an armored vehicle, is even that is pretty darn heat-proof. So if, in the highly unlikely event this thing gets shot from above by a HESH shell or a heat shell, it won't instantly die, which is nice. So yeah, there's a lot of heavy armor with this thing. It's a big, expensive beast, so on the sliding scale of assault guns, or like, there's a number of terms for these things that I unfortunately am not super familiar with, like assault guns, tank destroyers, except tank destroyer can refer to kind of any ground-based vehicle, which their job... Like, a tank destroyer is really more of a job description than a vehicle category. It's like, modern tank destroyers tend to be things like the Armcell Striker, just with a giant gun mounted on the top of it. Or, like, a lighter armored vehicle that just has anti-tank missiles stuck on it. That's also a tank destroyer. So, this thing is like an old-timey tank destroyer, and not the old-timey American kind of tank destroyer either, which is things like the Wolverine, which is quite similar actually to, like, in concept at least, to the modern idea of a tank destroyer, which is this light armored vehicle. Well, light is like, I don't know, kind of, like, it's a big thing, but it's lightly armored and just has a giant gun, and is designed to be a bit of a glass cannon. It runs around, zipping around the battlefield, blowing up tanks. So, this is not that. This is the World War II German idea of, like, a tank destroyer, which is the Jagdtiger, the Nashorn, I think there's a thing called the Hummel, and just the Germans were very fond of these things. They made an awful lot of them. In fact, I think almost all of them were German. The ones that I can remember, no other nation during World War II seemed to have a fondness for these things. And I think that's, in the historical context, that's because Germany was on the defensive during the latter part of the war, and these things were great I mangled my tongue there. These things were great for defense because they're very good at the whole hull down thing. They've got quite a low profile. And, like, in the From the Depths contest, they're good for that reason as well, because the gun on this thing is enormous. And if you're a little bit more experienced than I am at, like, building armored vehicles in From the Depths, like, I have no idea why I stuck surge protectors in there. That actually seems kind of pointless. But, if you're more experienced than I am, and frankly a lot of people are, building armored vehicles in From the Depths, you could probably stick the very same gun I stuck on this into a much, much smaller hull, and, like, even get it within the Ashes volume limit. So, yeah, simply because this is like a fixed gun craft, or a hull-mounted craft, so the huge gun in it doesn't need to go in a turret, it's inside the hull. That saves a lot of volume. If I tried to stick that same thing in a turret, this thing would be a lot bigger. So, yeah, it's turned out to be quite a decent gun for the chassis, I guess, even though the whole thing is a little bit big. Although I have had advice in the comment section. Have I mentioned how much I like the comment section and how it tells me awesome, helpful things? It's quite good, actually. So yeah, you can see lots of heavy armor poles, because I'm just paranoid about that heat and hash, man. I'm just paranoid all the time. Probably overkill for this, but yeah, later in the combat tests, not to spoil anything, it kind of works. Like, in the combat test, I kind of goofed in that, I realized that this thing, because it's, like, just so heavily armored, because it's a fixed gun craft, and also because of what else, the other things I end up putting on it, it's actually will be a pretty good counter to the Onyx Watch, and the Lightning Hoods, because, yeah, like, I won't spoil that, but... Okay, no, I will spoil that, but it's like I end up putting shields and like smoke on this thing, so it's really, really tanky. And so yeah, where was I? I forgot where I was originally going with this. It's just, well, you can see for yourself as this whole thing. I actually got the idea for using these heavy armor poles. It's like I was aware of the whole practice before I started this, but I was made acutely aware of it by a relatively new vehicle that's been added to the Ashes of the Empire campaign. It's something called the Fenrir. So it's a front-siding armored car of the Steel Striders, so go check it out. I love that thing. I love the way it is designed. It's not a perfect design. In my combat test against it, it tends to get AI deaded. Like once it's a front, like hull compartments get breached. And that's because it's got the engine in front, a big steam engine powering, and railgun turret in the back. Then the AI, then the turret, which means it gets AI deaded before the gun gets destroyed, which isn't a bad thing, really, for a front-sider, because, frankly, if you've only got one big gun, you might as well get AI deaded before that, because either or happens first, you're pretty much useless. Although not the same with this as of yet unnamed assault gun, because you'll notice I actually wasn't paying attention to my own bleeding video. Oh no, I have stuck missiles on this thing because it is a pure kinetic shell in the main gun, and so it does tend to ping off shields a little bit. Not to an intolerable degree, but it does do that, and so the EMP missiles are just there to just fry the odd shield, preferably, and also to completely AI dead smaller craft, or even like any planes that might decide to get cheeky and fly over the top of this. So yeah, that is this ended up being a reasonably versatile tank. Well, assault gun. Like, I don't know. Let me know in the comments what the actual term for this thing should be. I say assault gun because that's basically what it is. Or self-propelled gun, even. But like self-propelled gun to me suggests artillery, and that's not what this is. But yeah, so I don't know. I like this thing. Like by the end of it, like I don't like. By the way, just this is again, it's skipping ahead in the video a little bit. Like, and it's like I literally just finished recording the footage that you're seeing now, and I'm just watching it back and commentating as I see it. I freaking love the camouflage thing, the new camo mechanic, because it's just so much easier than painting the darn thing. And I also love how, like, with the material, the highly controversial resource overhaul, just getting rid of ammo and fuel, and just having everything be materials, I love how much denser it makes, like, ammo storage. Because this thing has a tiny ammo compartment, and it's all it needs, really. It's great. And also, you'll notice me putting turning thrusters in here, because I really want this thing to be able to turn and maneuver to face the enemy, like, really well. Because something like this, if it's not pointing at the enemy, it's not that darn useful, because that massive APS gun in the front, like, you know, this side towards enemy, this is a giant armored equivalent of a claymore mine, essentially. It's just like, it is meant to point one way, and one way only, and you'll see, like, the thing is, like, so much heavy armor. This thing is so expensive. It's a little bit silly, but, you know what? The first time I was ever going to build one of these things, it was going to get a little silly. There were going to be mistakes. There were going to be things I do better, and that's kind of the thing with From the Depths. The first 10 versions of anything you build, if you're lucky, it'll be just the first 10. It will suck. It will not be as good as it could possibly be. It will not be optimized. And, yeah, like, because the best... like, it's as, like, here's a quote from my dad. My dad, who I'm very fond of. And is, you only really know the way to do a job when you're almost finished. And it's such good life advice because it's like, it was only, like, I don't know, the absolute best vehicle I will ever build in From the Depths, like, well, that any of us will build really, will probably be one of the last ones, which is it's a sad thought, kind of, but also it's like, it's a humbling thought to, like, the absolute last thing you do in this game, and actually in life, really, will probably be, like, whatever the thing is, it'll be at when you're most competent for it. So the last boat I ever build in From the Depths, whenever that may be, that'll probably be the most, like, optimized one, if nothing else, because the game will hopefully be completely finished by then, and all the mechanics will just be, like, will be immovable, they'll be, that's how it'll be. But yeah, this turned philosophical way sooner than I expected, so let's get back to looking at this. Wheels are not ideally armored for this thing. Like, ideally for wheels for tanks and stuff like that, you really should, like, completely enclose them and, like, cover them from as many sides as possible. I tend not to do that, and you'll see I'm messing around with all the presets here, and I pretty much always set the spring length and the max spring force to maximum, simply because that, I don't know, I just get best results from that. It means the thing doesn't rub its belly on the ground. It looks really weird, I will admit. Those of you who love your aesthetic tanks builds will probably look at this and go, what are you doing, mate? That's just weird. And this is also kind of where I noticed that using the tank wheel preset, it kind of, like, if your wheels are orientated anything other than straightforward, like, it messes with, like, the up and down axes, and that's actually not what you want. And so that possibly explains why on my other tanks they actually cannot go uphill very well, because the blasted front and back wheels aren't actually responding to the right input, which is annoying. So yeah, I'm manually setting them there, and it seems to work. It seems to work. I really need to do a kind of cross-country, a rough terrain test with this thing. Oh yeah, because by the way, it's a good idea to do that with, like, any form of land vehicle, just to make sure they can actually go up and down hills. Because an awful lot of vehicles, land vehicles that I've seen, both like faction craft and user craft, they actually have lousy all-terrain capability, which is why you'll remember, like, ages ago I made a little vehicle on, like, fake land vehicles, and this was back before, like, the big wheels were added to the game. I should mention as well, those of you who don't know and can't tell, this is beta test, because I'm just sticking with beta test until all the changes in it are, all the current changes in it at least, are heading over to stable. Simply because, like, I don't want to switch back and forth, and frankly there's not much, since I'm doing the campaign in beta test, and since I'm reviewing beta test a lot, and also because I want to play test in beta test a lot, simply so I can kind of, like, get ahead of the curve a little bit. Because you don't want to go, like, if you play in beta test and switch back to vanilla, and then you kind of forget, like, the differences in beta test, like, it'll kind of catch you up. And yeah, speaking of that, like, detection systems have also, like, kind of been changed in beta test, which is, like, yet another reason to stick with it if you have made the commitment to switch over. Because you can't tweak it as much, it's actually a little bit easier to mess with, because there's, I don't know, less stuff to tweak and mess around with. And also the settings are a little bit different. I believe I covered that in the update videos. And so this is the point where you'll notice that I was messing around, was sticking the detection, like, way in the rear, which is a sensible thing to do, by the way. You want to keep it away from where the bullets are landing, which tend to be on the front. And I had the cunning idea, is like, hang on, since the hull armor is like 2 meters thick, like it's a layer of metal and a layer of heavy armor, why not just, like, sink the detection down a little bit, so it's, like, in the hull itself. And so, I don't know, like, it seemed to work pretty well. It's like, the great thing about this is that the detection and all the metal sits outside the fully enclosed heavy armor hull, which is the right way to use heavy armor, by the way. It's like, if you're gonna protect something with heavy armor, you gotta make sure it's wrapped all the way around. I've said this so many times in the Subscribercraft review, like, there are exceptions to that rule, because this is From the Depths we're talking about. I mean, come on, like, there's no hard and fast rules, there are just highly recommended guidelines. I have seen instances where there's just a very strategically placed and well thought out spot to stick a heavy armor beam that just has a very specific desired effect. And like walling off ammo explosions is one of those things. Like if you don't want to, if you want to make something super compact, just sticking like a few blocks of heavy armor between the ammo storage and the next closest component can actually stop the ammo from just destroying that other component, and you don't need to fully wrap it. So as a kind of explosion buffer, heavy armor is quite useful for that. And yeah, it doesn't require a full wrap. But if you are going to actually want to protect something with heavy armor, it's usually like 99% of the time do the full wrap, because otherwise what'll happen is that the heavy armor, like I've said this many times before, but it's worth mention again. Bearing mention. Nice grammar, BorderWise. It's worth mentioning again that it will outlast absolutely everything around it, so basically means that whatever other protection you've got around is like, that will go first, and then the heavy armor will be useless because there'll be a nice juicy gap in it for whatever damage is leaking through to leak through and destroy your AI or your ammo or your engines or whatever important thing. And speaking of protection, you'll notice I am making very liberal use of the portholes, the metal portholes. I love these things. I have once again forgotten the name of the person who told me about them, but seriously, like you are on my Christmas card list forever, because it makes such a difference to protecting your detection. Like anything that detects things with a visible wavelength of light, so we're talking like the laser targeter, or laser, I don't know, the laser tracker, rather, and visual cameras. Like, it's just so useful. It allows you to armor them quite nicely. Which, by the way, like in the video I did on spin block detection, and just pointing out how it's like it is a handy, if cheesy, way to like armor your detection components that couldn't otherwise be protected. So like radars and infrared cameras and stuff like that. Yeah, and like it is pointed out to me that in real life that like radar substances that allow radar waves to pass through them, they do exist and are used on like they're used by real life militaries. Like they have armored radars. Like the actual radar itself is contained within like a metal dome that is protection. That's what it's there for. And so it's kind of a bummer we don't have anything like that in From the Depths, but who knows? Maybe it'll get added eventually. Maybe the devs will add it. Maybe after the game is released, like some enterprising modder will add it in. Who knows? In the meantime, like, I don't know. With that justification, I'm a little bit easier on the idea of internal spin block protection. And here is, by the way, like I just messing with the maneuvers, but here is a surprising thing. It's a lure box. I actually do remember who told me about this and who gave me this lure code. Knifekun, shout out, thank you very much. By the looks of it, a lot of people are now have used that code, and it's like it's worked street. All it is that in the last Ashes video, I was saying how it would be nice to get a notification whenever a vehicle takes damage. And turns out there's a lure code for that, which I just, you would have seen on screen. I just pasted into the lure box that is on this craft. And all that code does is that it creates an update notification on the HUD. You'll see it pop up later when I'm combat testing this thing. Basically it says X vehicle has taken damage, and that's it. That is super cool, and it works an absolute treat, and I've stuck it on pretty much all the vehicles I'm using in Ashes at the moment, because honestly, there's no reason not to use it. It's just so amazing. And it's pretty much the first time I've ever seriously used lure. And I can't write lure, but like once you've got a code, it's there, and this, like, I don't know, it doesn't feel cheesy at all. It feels incredibly helpful. It's exactly what I was asked for. It's exactly what I wanted, and so thank you, Knifekun, who's, yeah, their profile picture is a knife, in case you're wondering. So yeah, and those of you who like were fast enough to pause the video right there and see that code, like, feel free to use it for yourself. Like, quite frankly, it's a free country and you can use it. And here you can see, like, since this thing is RTG powered, you have noticed me chucking out the RTGs and all that. And yeah, so this is me testing the turning, and it seems to turn reasonably nicely. And what else was I going on about? So, maneuvers. Maneuvers are important. So, I had a bit of a false start with the maneuvers thing, because point at, maintain distance. And here's me messing around with numbers and decided, yeah, 1,000 is good. And combat altitude, 1 meter, because quite frankly, this thing, that's kind of pointless because, and here's my first mistake is messing with this menu, because generally speaking, all the behaviors, their default settings are actually okay, and will see you right most if not all of the time. So don't actually mess with them unless you really have to. Like, see here again, I'm like messing with this, and honestly, like, don't mess with the maneuvers, or don't mess with any of the AI behaviors or maneuvers, like, if you don't have to. Only do it if your vehicle is not actually doing what you wanted to do yet. And at this point, that's a big mistake I do right here, because then I futz around later, just trying to get it to do what I wanted to do, when in actuality, the default was what I wanted it to do in the first place. And you'll see here I'm having trouble getting the big gun on target, and the EMP missiles are just killing these little things, what are they? The Sand Vipers. Before I can even, like, look, there you see, AI dead, spawn another one, and at this point I forget that you can turn on God mode for enemy craft as well as your own. So there, AI dead, I'm like, this isn't going very well, and it's like, dude, come on now. And at this point, I turn on God mode for my vehicle, for the assault gun instead of the Sand Viper, and boom, and it's AI dead. Well, not AI dead yet, but it will be soon. I'm like, come on, why isn't this thing turning properly? And it's because it's just not, it's because in the settings, I tweaked it to, like, there's a setting for a front-sider, the front-sider behavior to disable moving forward or backward when the enemy is greater than a number of degrees of azimuth away. Probably could have said that better. And I turned that off, and so my tank is endlessly driving and circling and behaving more like a plane. And so here the gun is almost on target, and then is off target, and then the thing is AI dead, and then I spawn another Sand Viper, which is behind me. So at this point, I'm forgetting that combat testing is like, I don't know, you gotta you gotta do it right. So in turning circle, I messed with that as well, and that wasn't working, and once again, just freaking that. And here is where I spot the UI and say, like, you don't have enough ammo, mate, you better add more ammunition, and so I'm like, ugh, fine, okay. And conveniently, there's enough space left in here for that, so, and I just put some heavy armor blocks back there, just stick some more ammo in, and it's absolutely lovely, and everything is absolutely a-okay. Enough ammunition, just, like, fantastic that ammo storage and usage is so dense now that you can put very few ammo barrels on your craft. It's like, people who are critiquing the whole material, the whole resource overhaul thing, so many people in the comments were just blissfully demonstrating and unaware of how easily they were demonstrating how ignorant they were of what these changes would actually mean. They thought, oh, we're going to have to put lots of ammo on our craft. No, you require less, and we're going to have to fill our craft with fuel. No, you'll require less. It's easier. It is actually easier to make vehicles of all kinds now, because you don't need to dedicate so much space to it. You can dedicate it to something else. Compact designs are easier to do now, and smaller designs are also easier to do now. And here's me endlessly still trying to, like, get the gun on target. And here is where it's like, aha, yes, it's done, it's right, fix the behavior, it's on target, and first shot misses completely, I believe. Heavy barrels don't traverse fast, but thankfully, yep, there it is, and it, I believe, yes, it whiffed. I actually failed to spot while I'm watching this if I managed to turn on God mode for the Sand Viper. I think I did, actually. And at this point I decided, you know what's really cool? Adding more barrels. So here's more barrels for pretty much no reason at all whatsoever. I'm not sure why I did that. The thing was already pretty darn accurate. Ah yeah, I did turn on God mode. Right, so here's, I want to see the main gun, and you see this thing is reversing quite quickly, actually. So this, purely by accident, this huge lumbering behemoth of an assault gun is actually faster than the Ironback, which is kind of hilarious, really. And like, yeah, it's like this thing. I guess that's kind of what happens. When you get more experience with building any kind of craft, is just basically all the newer stuff you make just completely outstrips the old. And here I'm doing a combat test against a King Cobra, which isn't truly a fair combat test because already the assault gun is like twice the material cost of the King Cobra. It's just the King Cobra is kind of it's a decently formidable vehicle for the Dustwind Gypsies anyway. So it's a decent combat test. Just like, I don't know, as a kind of initial yardstick. And you'll see here's like, you might also, I should mention as well why exactly I went with Hollow Point for that giant APS, because you might think that pure Kennex Sabo would be better, or maybe pen depth, or something like that, and I don't know, I tested Hollow Point. I didn't actually test penetration depth, that might be better. But the Hollow Point at the specific kind of shell setup, you can see just so many of those shots are bouncing off those heavy armor slopes. Sloped armor is actually pretty decent. And weirdly enough, and there's a missile bouncing off. Like, for once in my life, that worked in my favor. This thing is surprisingly evasive because it moves back and forth, and shots, because it's so low slung, and there you'll see that Hollow Point just completely mulched a turret on the front of the King Cobra. Yeah, it's just like, it's surprisingly evasive, and you'll notice these bomblets, actually, they kind of slide underneath the assault gun. So yeah, and also the Hollow Point is just, the tested just an armor-piercing round, and it did occasionally have a good effect. It would just, like, punch straight through a target and, like, cook off the turret and stuff like that. But the Hollow Point, like, you can look at the King Cobra now, it just disintegrates entire sections of the vehicle, which actually results in a much more, I don't know, a much faster kill, I find. Because, and there you see that little bomb just snuck under the assault gun and actually can't, like, reach it anymore, because the ground clearance is too high. And, yeah, the Hollow Point combined with those missiles is actually pretty good because it opens up big holes in the target, and then the missile's thump damage actually is enough to destroy a lot of delicate components that are exposed by that, or the MP does it. So yeah, it's a pretty decent combination, so happy with that, how that turned out. And so yeah, the next while is just a whole bunch of combat tests. And yeah, so like testing against the Onyx Watch now, because I have been the comments on the last Ashes of the Empire video were kind of like saying like, dude, you need to get more firepower because otherwise, like, the Onyx Watch is going to take. Actually, no, it wasn't that one. I think it was a previous episode. I don't quite remember, but it's basically saying like, you need to get more firepower, my man, because otherwise the Onyx Watch are just going to eat all your materials with just how durable they are. Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of the rear of the assault gun. It's a little bit too flat, but like, I don't know. I don't want to put any more materials, any more blocks on it, because, I don't know, this thing is expensive enough as it is. And the Lucerne is also not a super good combat task, because it's not nearly as expensive as the assault gun. But yeah, this is where we learn that the assault gun is actually not that bad in the melee, simply because the whole thing is heavy armor. And there you see a shot, an unfused cram shot, ping off it. And we're actually doing decent damage, like down to 5% health already, and I don't know why. APS shells just sometimes decide to not spawn at all. And right here, the Lucerne gets a little bit too close, and we run it over slightly. So that's hilarious and fun, and there, I think we get to see how little shells do. Yep. And that little shot did absolutely nothing because of the armored hull. That's pretty sweet. And there we see that thruster. This thing turns actually really well. Essential ingredient. There, we're getting the gun right on target. Missiles. See, the missiles were kind of things like, yeah, I'm not sure why. Very early in the design process, just when I was still dreaming up this vehicle, I thought, yeah, it needs missiles, just like in case anything gets behind it. Works really well, and right now, Onyx Watchcraft, they seem to have pretty lousy turning, actually. Like, it's quite often they just run away into the middle distance, which is why having a big APS gun like that is so helpful. And another reason you'll notice that massive hollow point actually is pretty good at like deleting sections of track and just deleting multiple vehicles at once, which means it tends to cripple things before it kills them. It's quite convenient. I reckon a pair of these things could, yeah, and the EMP is just, it's great. Like, EMP is fantastic. It's great. It's like, it just turns things off, just preemptively, like, dials down the amount of damage you're dealing. The hollow point does have an annoying habit of sometimes it only takes off one block at a time, but then, again, occasionally it just peels craft like an onion, and is absolutely fantastic. So yeah, it's pretty good all around. You see right there, for instance, it's just opened up sections of hull right there, and actually is there right there you can see immediately just a big section of hull is opened up, and then the missiles went through that hole, and they actually are delivering their EMP inside the target, which is kind of hard to do, really, because, like, pen depth EMP isn't really a thing. Basically, the best you can hope for is just do exactly like this. You open up a hole and send EMP warheads of some kind straight through it, which means that this assault gun is actually pretty dangerous against anything with heavy armor, because it's got EMP weaponry which melts it, and a hollow point which, if it hits a heavy armor block, it damages multiple heavy armor beams, and also will damage whatever the heavy armor is attached to, which is super convenient when you're shooting at compact designs in which the heavy armor is like very tightly wrapped around something. I think that works pretty darn well. And aesthetics-wise, I actually quite like how this assault gun turned out. That just that very, very steep slope in the front. You can see me kind of looking at his backside there, and not being tremendously happy with the lack of slope there. Like, I might just add some, like metal slopes just to balance it out, make it look a little bit more fine. And you can see right, right there is just the moment in which the target just ceased to exist. So it's quite handy. And this is the point where I decide, the thing got behind me, so I should probably add some weaponry to cover its butt. Because following the spirit of real-life assault guns, they tended to, the Germans, as I recall, this is historical perspective again, on the Eastern Front of World War II, found out the hard way that if you've got a vehicle that is got its main weaponry pointed straight forward, it helps to have at the very least a machine gun or something covering the rear, because otherwise infantry just sneak up behind you and shove grenades down your exhaust pipe or other nasty things like that. In fact, that's amusing anecdote. That's actually one of the reasons why the Germans developed a gun that could fire around corners. It was used to develop for urban warfare, and also for use on these self-propelled guns, on these tank destroyers, because it means that you could just kind of poke the gun out a hatch and just spray it all over your own hull. And since the hull is multiple millimeters of steel, it's not going to get really damaged much at all, but whatever Soviet infantry is climbing on you, they're going to have a very bad day. So, in a similar vein, sticking simple weapons on the back here, and I'm just kind of I do that sometimes, when I can't find the thing, I just wave my mouse around until I do. And just embed it here. And of course, the simple weapon that we want is, I think, everybody's favorite, which is the octuple flak gun. And at this point, just messing with the elevation, to have that nice, sexy aiming up. Looks like it's ready for action. And setting azimuth his strengths, because this is covering the rear. This is the booty guard of the assault gun. Booty guard. And that's not a phrase I thought I would say today. And at this point, I'm like, yeah, that's looking right. Hang on, there's room for more than one of these things. And so you'll see in just about a second, yeah, I save as a placeholder, and then I delete that, and I undo my work on the hull. This is one of the reasons why, like, a lot of the stuff I build and show on camera, I tend to build that off camera, because I build so much faster when I'm not commentating on it, which is why the Let's Builds, by the way, are taking this format with me recording a bunch of footage ahead of time and just commenting over it afterwards, because like multitasking is a bad idea. Like very few people can actually do it effectively. I certainly cannot do it effectively at all, and I believe the last Let's Build I did, which was the nuclear submarine, like people said, like, you know what, post-commentary is actually better because you say more stuff, you're less idle waffling and just all that stuff, because, yeah, and that's how we're gonna do it. And unfortunately, that does mean that kind of puts the kibosh on building streams, which are like, or at the very least, building streams where I plan to actually get anything significant done. Like building streams in which I'm just mucking about, having fun, maybe just learning things, just experimenting, doing science. That could be fun. Like, from what I understand, some other From the Depths content creators do exactly that thing. They just they just stream and they just mess about and they have a good time and everyone has a good time. And at the end of the day, that's what a stream's about. It's about having a good time. So yeah, but for building stuff in which I actually want to get the damn thing done and like mostly finished on camera, this format I think works really well, because it's actually kind of relaxing almost. Like usually with any kind of a video where I'm doing a commentary while like playing and commentary at the same time, it's I don't want to say it's stressful, it's just more brain work, because you're doing two things at once. Your brain is working twice as hard. This is actually a little bit easier because it's, I don't know, same amount of brain power spent, but you're kind of like, it's not all at once, so you actually have recovery time. So it's less tiring in a weird way. And you see, here's another combat test, here's that thing, and this is kind of one where I want the enemy vehicle to get behind me. It doesn't quite manage it because this thing turns really well. It's always nice when your combat tests go awry because your vehicle is actually doing the thing you designed it to do. And it's really the only really vulnerable part of this whole vehicle is like its upper deck, like the upper hull that's metal rather than heavy armor. And yeah, so this is working quite well. And yeah, you can see the little octuple gun firing away. It's doing some neat damage. EMP on the way, and then I think we're due to see a honking big there it is, there it goes. Honking big APS shell right there. It's yeah, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. So yeah, that's yeah, so this combat test goes fairly well. This assault gun, by the way, like, I really should. I didn't actually test it on camera against, you just look at the blocks fly off there. I didn't actually test it against anything that's in roughly its same price range. I really should have. I should have tested it against a Rhino or something. And I am going to do that off screen, just to test it against, like, really properly big nasty craft. Actually, that's not entirely fair. I just remembered I do test it against some Lightning Hood's craft. I almost said White Flares. I don't know why. I keep getting those two factions confused. Endlessly annoying. I think it's because they're allied, so they're kind of linked in my head, and they're both really annoying. So, again, they're both linked in my head. So, so yeah, I do test it against some big, scary Lightning Hood stuff, just to kind of test the laser defense I stick on it later. I keep spoiling this video. I keep spoiling this video for people. All right, so actually, no, not by much. Well done, BorderWise. Yeah, this is shields, and like you might be surprised to see me use shields, because I think it's pretty. For those of you who watch the channel reasonably regularly, should know that I have made my feelings regarding shield projectors very, very clear. In the past, I've not been particularly fond of them, and that's because in the past they've either been completely overpowered, and like shields are absolutely essential, and you're pretty much forced to use them if you don't want to get absolutely minced by advanced cannons. This was back in the day when advanced cannons were not balanced in the least. Like when Frag was completely ridiculous, and where Sabo was completely ridiculous, and you absolutely needed shields, otherwise it would destroy you. And yeah, I hated that whole meta, so that was a problem. So yeah, now and then after the APS update, and shields were tweaked, and they were almost useless. Like, they basically did almost nothing. They were the kind of thing that once you're absolutely out of ideas and you've got excess engine power, that's what you would stick on here. And I actually kind of like the way they're in beta test now, because for those of you who don't know or have forgotten, shields now, they've only got one mode. It's both reflecting shells and lowering the armor penetration ability of lasers. It's both at the same time. There's no switching between them. It just makes them much simpler to use and also way more useful because, yeah, I would go for actually laser defense over smoke. That's my first port of call. And in fact, I think here, like after I stick laser warners on here, actually I'm not sure what I'm doing here. Ah, here it is. I'm sticking smoke in here because I thought, like, hang on, we've got laser defense and we have some spare room in the hull of this thing. Why not stick smoke in here? Because, you know what, smoke... lasers are something to worry about. Like, even with the armor changes, and just how, like, blocks tend to have a lot more armor now, structural blocks anyway, lasers are still a threat. And I just noticed there I could stick some extra slopes on there. There's just some metal slopes. Like, and I might just do that. Like, the end result of what you see here, another spoiler alert, is that it's not the final version. I will be tweaking this off camera, because, like, if you've got suggestions for this, like, based on what you see here and me building it, like, share. By all means, share. Like, I was saying earlier how I friggin' love the comment section sometimes, and just how incredibly useful the advice is sometimes. Not always. So, like, it's the YouTube comment section. What can you expect? For every absolute gem, there's someone who quite clearly did not finish watching the video before they commented, and they say something that not only that I and everyone else already know, but was actually in the video to begin with. Like, so that happens slightly more often than I'd like, but you know what? Like, it's part of the ball game. Like, and people miss stuff, I understand that. Like, not everyone pays 100% attention, because I know for a fact that my videos, more than a few people, like, use my videos as background noise just when they're doing something else, often when they're playing from the depths. Which I take as a compliment, really, because that puts me in the company of, like I'm... well, let me tell you about the YouTube channels that I do for that, because I do that all the time. I use Game Grumps for that. I use Drawfee for that. I put on some, like, one of those multi-hour long, just relaxing music things, and I just build stuff in From the Depths. It's super cool, super good time. And, yeah, so, I understand that completely, but yeah, so, but if nothing else, as a favor to me, if you're watching this, if you've already written a comment, well, it's too late for you now. You've gone over to the dark side, but if you haven't, please watch the whole video before you comment anything, because you never know. Because one particular... It's not really a pet peeve. It's a thing that when it happens, I'm like, oh, right, you did that thing, didn't ya? It's when I get a comment notification, because YouTube does notify you sometimes, not always. It's like every X number of comments it'll tell you that there's a comment waiting your perusal. It's so often, like, it's like I get a notification and then I go to check the comment and it's not there anymore because the original, the person who posted deleted it. Because presumably what happened is they posted the comment before they finished watching the video, and then they finished watching the video, realized that what they said was, like, either covered in the video itself or just not particularly smart, or something along those lines, and then they delete it. I'm like, well, thanks for wasting 2 seconds of my life. As I said, it's not a huge complaint. That happens all the friggin' time. And, speaking of happening all the friggin' time, you'll notice I'm sticking camo on this, because it's so easy, you don't even have to wait until the vehicle's fully finished. I frickin' love camo, and like, on one hand, it's kind of annoying how Arctic camo is by far the best looking thing on my vehicles, or at least I think so. So, but yeah, it's like Arctic camo looks pretty sick, if I do say so myself, and you can tell it looks sick because I use the word sick. I don't often do that. I save the word sick for when things are truly, almost unquestionably sick, and here is me forgetting what paint I've selected. Like, I've set paint 5 to be a specific color, and then I'm trying to paint it with, like, paint 0, which is not the right paint at all. It's like, it takes me a hot second, and there I get it. There you go, BorderWise, good boy, and now you've set that to the wrong color, and there you go. Nice tinted dark glass. Lovely jubbly. So yeah, so laser defense is on, and here's me tweaking that so it looks a little bit more sexy, saving the thing again. Save your vehicles frequently. And just look at this thing is pretty much complete at this point, and what follows is just a little bit more combat testing, because combat testing is just, if nothing else, it's just fun. So, like really, like I combat test a lot, mostly because I find it fun. It's one of my favorite things about this game. You build a thing, you see if it works, you tweak it, and just that process can go on forever. And this first combat test goes a little bit awry because I spawned in a short-ranged laser craft, and the assault gun pretty much disables the weaponry on it before it can get within range. Which on the one hand is annoying because I was trying to test the laser defense on this thing, but on the other hand, it is super cool because, well, it disabled the thing almost immediately. Hooray for EMP missiles. Also, for some reason, just decided to drive forward and, like, forcibly penetrate it with its mighty cannon. Don't take that out of context. And, like, I'm not sure why it's, like, driving straight forward. I think it's just because it wanted to, and it realized, like, aha, I've got you where I want you, Sonny Jim. And there's, the, like, that side gun just mulching bits off it, and then the main gun fires, and like right there, it does almost nothing. It just takes off one block. But yeah, this is me now looking at the behavior thinking, why were you just driving straight forward? That was very weird. That was super weird. Thinking back on it, it was probably the turning circle that I set, because you'll notice I set it really high. But I could probably turn that way back down again, because there's no way this thing has a turning circle of 150 meters. That's crazy. And here is where the assault gun lives up to its name. It's just being very assaulty. Being assaulty Sandra. I cannot take credit for that joke. That is a really old Game Grumps joke, because I was watching Game Grumps earlier today, as background noise, as it turns out. But, yeah. Like, you get a gold star if you know what episode of Game Grumps that is from, because there are literally thousands. Like, good luck figuring that out. And here is where I tested this assault gun finally against something that is bigger and more expensive than it is, which is quite an achievement, because the assault gun is powered by RTGs, it's made out of heavy armor, and has got a giant freaking ABS inside it. And here, immediately, you see that the combination of the shields and the smoke, like, the laser's doing basically nothing. And, like, the missiles also, like there's, like, 2 metal beams fall off, and that's about it. And you see bits, a bit of block confetti falling off, I believe that's the Luxor Turner. I just spawned this in, you'd think I'd notice this. No, it's the Tectonic. It is the Tectonic. I cannot read, and I have a memory of a goldfish, apparently. Which, by the way, is not a fair comparison, because goldfish apparently have really, really good memories, to the point that they can recognize their owner's voice. So yeah, if you've ever flushed a goldfish down the toilet, that is a terrible thing to do, and you should feel bad, because you committed murder of a thinking, feeling being, as it turned out. So you should feel really bad, and you should go, I don't know, do penance. You should go, I'm not sure what you should do, hug a shark or something? Like, I don't know. In the off-topic channel over on the Discord, there were pictures of cute sharks earlier, and, like, frankly, I don't know, made me quite happy to see that. And, yeah, so you see that, like, the assault gun is winning this one really easily, because the amount of smoke, and also given that this thing tends to sit within its own smoke crowd, That is the Japanese way of saying cloud, apparently. That is not racist, that's actually how they say it. Like Final Fantasy VII, they say crowdu. At least, I hope that isn't racist in how they say it, otherwise I'm gonna look very, very stupid. Because I know that Japanese doesn't really have an L... No, it doesn't have an L sound. I think I'm correct, I hope I'm correct. And if I'm not correct, may I be smited by the god of murdered goldfish. So, yeah. You see, right, like, this assault gun does freaking good work, I gotta tell you. And it also looks cool, which is also a nice bonus. So, yeah. Good news, I seem to have figured out how to build armored vehicles. Not to toot my own horn too much. There, I just did it. And yeah, it's just combination, EMP missiles, massive APS in front, and just those little simple weapons covering its bum-bum. I think we've got a winner here, ladies and gentlemen, and yeah, name suggestions will be highly appreciated because I haven't a clue what to name this thing, frankly. Yeah, because, like, by the way, my naming conventions are all over the place. And yeah, I don't know what to name this. And you'll, like, this is the point where I realize, oh, right, we're dumping a load of smoke, which means that that laser targeter, or the laser tracker rather, isn't actually going to do any good because that gets obscured by smoke. So instead, I stick a retroreflection sensor there, realize that it can only see forward, and that's not damn good. And so it's time for more metal portholes, because metal portholes are awesome, and I never leave home without them. It makes going to the supermarket quite awkward, because I'm just lugging around giant metal portholes that are 1 by 1 by 1 meters, like, big. People give me funny looks, and then they ask, why aren't you wearing a mask? Because of the Backstreet Boys reunion tour. Yeah, I should stop stealing jokes from Game Grumps. I should come up with my own material. Also, I have a blocked nose because apparently it's hay fever season. I was walking around a lot outside today, so yeah. Also, I appreciate very much that glass is significantly tougher than it used to be. It's not super tough, unfortunately. But, yeah, that's the point where I decided, you know what, this thing doesn't actually need to see backwards. That could be a bit of a mistake, because it means that the rear guns might have trouble. This thing is sunk into the ground for some reason. I have no idea why that is. Yeah, yeah, I don't know. There's mysteries in life. And so yeah, it's just, I decided, like, well, maybe it'll get itself out of the ground. And as it turns out, it does not. But it's all good, because this thing can destroy craft that are behind it. It doesn't even need the main gun for that. Very stuck in the ground. Common problem with giant, heavy super tanks, and just AI deaded the thing. So I just spawn in... what did I spawn in? I spawn in a thing, a random Onyx Watch thing, the Overseer, which is a crime mortarcraft. And I'm like, oh bugger, this is really stuck. So, caps lock, get out there. Which... that is possibly one of the weirdest dodges I've ever had a vehicle do, is just, you know, dodge through levitation. And then we're gonna, by sheer dumb coincidence, a front-sider battle. Because there I saved the assault gun for what is basically the last time, on camera at least. And then it's time to rumble. So it's pretty cool. And I love this thing. So yeah, and then this thing behaves exactly as I wanted to, which is like, it's all you can really ask for when you build something from the desk, particularly if you're building a vehicle category for a specific kind of vehicle for the first time. All you can really ask for, really. And so yeah, the rest of this video is basically just these two vehicles duking it out, and me just looking and feeling reasonably proud of my work for once. So yeah, that's about it, really. It's Assault Gun. It's basically finished. Just a little bit of tweaking here and there, needs a name. And yeah, so on that note, thank you all so much for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. Support me on Patreon if you like, it really helps. Thank you to all my current Patreon supporters, and I will see you next time in From the Depths. Farewell! And the video is apparently not over yet, so I'm just going to stall for time a little bit. Actually, no, I'm not. Farewell!